Hello, thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. I'm Segalla. I'll be your moderator this time. I'm also president of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association. Our guest we're very excited to report is Leslie Davis, our county assessor. Leslie received our award for excellence in government service a while back, so she's certainly a friend of the taxpayer, though not all would agree. We'll find out during this interview. Leslie, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Al.
And tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you do to have fun.
Wow, that's a mouthful, and we've only got 30 minutes. So it's been my honor to serve Calaveras County voters and taxpayers as assessor for a little bit over 5 years now. My background is in private business. I had my own independent fee appraisal business, and in government. I came to Calaveras County in 2000, but had previous government experience before that. What we do to have fun, if I don't have an event going on to attend, I like to play with the dogs and read. But there are so many things to do in Calaveras County at any given time. As you know, whether it's outdoor activities or attending events by community groups. In the winter, we tend to go to the ovations by the Calaveras Arts Council. The last couple of weeks, it's been Friends of the Library functions. I have a Trivia Bee team competing this coming Saturday. And then we start gearing up for fair in my capacity on the Friends of the Fair board. We have our kickoff event, the Whiskerino Dinner Dance, and that takes us into mid-May. As you know, the summer is full of all kinds of activities, and I really look forward to the fall when all the communities start having their own little parades. The White Pines has the Logging Jamboree, which is great fun if you've never been. West Point has Lumberjack Day, and then by Christmas, Valley Springs is having their Christmas parade. So there's always something to do having fun in the county.
Wow, you should be also working for the Visitors Bureau. Tell us a little bit about what your office does.
My office is responsible for producing the county's assessment roll. It's approximately $5.5 billion assessment roll, where we maintain the values of all property in the county and all accessible personal property in the county.
I understand that the recession that we've experienced has had an effect on your office and on the taxpayers. How is the assessment roll affected by that, and what's happening?
Well, the law requires that the assessor proactively reduce values if it's warranted. So we are required by law on January 1st of every year to look at the value of property and compare it to what its assessed value would be, which is what some people refer to as the Prop 13 value. So we compare current market value on January 1st to that factor base year value, and we're required to enroll the lesser of the two. And that requirement is whether or not the property owner calls and asks for that, because we're required to do it on a proactive basis. Since about 2007, we've seen a decline in the assessment roll, and it's been pretty significant. We peaked at $7 billion, plus or minus, and as I said, we're down to about $5.5 billion. So we've seen about a 20% decrease over the past 6 or 7 years.
Has the county budget followed that pattern and also shrank by 20%?
I don't think it's shrunk quite by that percentage.
I understand that we were in the hole maybe $8 million, which is a growing point of concern to our county auditor and some of our supervisors as well.
I think it should be a growing point of concern. I think that when government is overspending its revenues, local government certainly does not have the capability of printing money, so they have to tighten the belt, and that is what we are now faced with because of spending decisions that have been made. We have been tightening the belt. The first year we were required to make a 10% cut, then a 17% cut, and so we have been gradually cutting, but spending policies have been such that we find ourselves in this situation and we'll need to work through it.
What I understand that the effects of cutting your budget reduced your manpower, where you couldn't collect the unsecured roll for a while anyway, and then I think you worked with some of the other departments and did some things with personnel and then recovered from that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, a few years ago, the board asked me to cut 8% from my budget, and I looked at what my costs were compared to what we were producing. And I discovered that about 8% of my costs were being spent to produce the unsecured roll, and that reflected less than 2.5% of our work product. It didn't make sense from a business standpoint to expend those kinds of resources for that little return on the money. And I told the board that if they wanted that cut to be made, the ramification would be that we would not support the unsecured roll. The board made that cut anyway, and so what we ended up with a year later was their realization that part of the decline in the assessment roll was due to that funding decision. They asked me if I would take action to try and remedy that. We did, in fact, ask for an extension to produce the roll by the state, and they granted it. And then we pulled in some folks from other departments and outside, and we worked for 6 weeks. My staff did an outstanding job pulling that together, and I also thank the others from the other departments for coming in to help. So we've really never had a break in that unsecured assessment roll. We just continue to have some problems with it.
I see. What happens to the assessed value when the market rebounds?
Well, many people, 20,400 in fact, have had their values reduced as a result of these declining market values. But we know the market is starting to show signs of turning around. It hasn't come all the way back, but it is starting to come back. When a property is put in decline in value status, that value is not protected by anything, except it is capped by that protected value under Article 13A of the California Constitution. So there's that protected value that they had that we reduced the value below, and it's always sitting there as our measurement. So every year we look at current market value and that factored base year value, and we enroll the lesser of the two. So for example, someone may have had their value reduced to $200,000 last year, and this year the market value might be $240,000, but their factored base year value is $300,000. We're going to raise it to $240,000.
I see.
Even though that's a 20% increase.
Does that mean reevaluating all these 20,400 properties every year?
It does. The workload on my office has been tremendous, despite the fact that the cuts in the office have been huge as well.
I don't understand how you can do that. That's an awful lot of properties to review.
It is, but we have some very efficient systems in place, and I think they're doing an excellent job given the constraints we're working under. Everybody has the same constraints. I think they're just doing a bang-up job looking at as many properties as possible, because our obligation is to the property owners and the taxpayers to ensure that their values do not exceed the market.
Yes. What is the pattern with that market now?
We are seeing increases in some areas. We have not done our analysis yet of what's happening in all areas of the county, but certainly some of the areas that I've asked about, my staff is coming back to me and telling me that they are measuring some increases. So I expect to see some values go up this year.
Would some be 2% or 20%?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It could be either one.
Yes, and I'll tell you that one of the things I did last year is for every one of those 20,000 letters that went out saying this is what we've lowered your value to, on the back of the letter we explained why we were lowering the values and what happens when the market rebounds, so that those property owners won't be surprised if it's one of the 20%
Right.
or something else.
I see. I understand recently Supervisor Spellman has been critical, and he suggested that you're not as active in raising the taxes as you were in lowering them. And of course, that's a mixed blessing to the taxpayer. But it seems to me, from my experience with the Assessors Appeals Board and the types of cases that come in front of us, that you seem to be following the law, and you're not favoring anybody.
Well, I believe that's the case, Al. And I would say that it's unfortunate Supervisor Spellman's making those comments. He's making them out of ignorance. He certainly hasn't called to talk to me about what our office actually does. If he had, he wouldn't be quoting the Case-Shiller Index, for example, which is not used in assessment practices. The market is.
Right.
He would not suggest that I've told my staff to follow a policy that's patently violates the law.
Right.
And he would understand that the tax bill that you have in your hand right now that's due by April 10th is based on the January 2013 value,
Okay.
not current market. So there's a 16-month delay between the valuation date and when you might be paying your taxes, and that's the value that it's based on. So if he'd taken the time to call me, and I encourage you or anyone else who would like to call me, our office number is 754-6356. Feel free to give us a call. My staff will answer your questions. If they can't, I'll certainly do what I can to get the question answered.
That's 754
6356.
6356. Okay. Well, that's good. We got the air cleared. There's some changes. What changes have you made to the office since you became assessor?
Well, one of the first things I did, because I could see that the market was not doing well, and so any prudent manager was going to see we were going to start to make cuts, is I started cutting staff using attrition. So when I became assessor, I did not fill the assistant assessor position, and I took on those responsibilities. When a supervising appraiser we had retired, I eliminated that management position. And of course, we've been downsizing ever since through layoffs and staff members who found jobs in other departments. Along the way, we attempted to look at a new property tax system. Last year, the board they authorized us to look at the new system, but then they opted to spend the money that had been saved for that system to fund deputies. So that is pretty well gone.
I see. That's the Megabyte software
The
system?
Megabyte software is what we currently use.
Okay. And then this new system would replace that?
It would have.
I see. What was the cost of the new system?
Well, we estimated the cost to completely implement the new system upwards of, as I recall, $4 million. So there was a tremendous cost associated with it, because not only did we need to buy the system itself, there were some equipment upgrades, and then we knew we would have downtime for the learning curve.
Yes. Is there any way to, $4 million seems to be quite a shock to our budget. Is there any way that could be financed over 10 years?
That included 10 years of financing. We had worked out a financing deal with the software company.
So the total cost was $4 million.
Correct.
But the cost for the first year
was less than that.
So maybe 10% of that? Is it 10-year?
I don't remember the exact numbers, but it did front load. The first 3 years were higher than the following years.
I see.
At this point, it's moot. The board spent the money. That money will not replenish quickly. So we have...
it may be a couple of years then before we
it
can
may
purchase
be
again.
a little bit more than a couple of years. I'd say it's probably going to be closer to 8 to 10 years. And at that point, my staff is... operating with the megabyte system. We have renewed our relationship with that vendor. We are on very good working terms with them at this point.
Oh, that's good. And perhaps something else could be invented by then.
One never knows.
What kind of questions does your office receive regarding the fire fee or the fire tax?
Well, I certainly believe it's a tax. I think I was the first elected official to come out in opposition to it with a letter to the editor to the Calaveras Enterprise. The fire fee, if you will, has been very controversial. We're now in our third series of bills from the state. We receive phone calls because when folks call the State Board of Equalization, they're told we got the information from the assessor, and that is simply not true. They got the information from a vendor who is buying the data from outside data resellers.
Oh, DataQuick.
Yes, one of those. And then we'll get a question about why the state thinks it's a habitable structure. And sometimes we're able to help the taxpayer by writing a letter that says, according to our records, there are no habitable structures. So we get questions about that. Just last spring, when we got the second series of bills, I had a constituent come in with a problem, and I was able to put them in touch with someone at the State Board of Equalization to resolve the questions and issues they had. But people like to come to someone local, and so we have on our front counter posted the questions and answers, frequently asked questions on the fire fee. And we also have copies of the petition for redetermination, which is their appeal. So if someone doesn't have access to a computer and can't fill it out online, they can come into our office and pick up a copy.
Oh, that's very good. I wasn't aware of that.
Yes.
Here I am, a Taxpayer Association. I should know all that. Oh my God! And I'm on TV too. This is terrible. Can we get a copy of the? We've been using a petition from the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association, who's also filed suit against the state.
Yes.
And apparently that it's not come to trial yet, and we're not sure exactly what its status is. But perhaps we can get. Can we go online and get a copy of the petition so we could share it with our members?
Well, absolutely. The Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, hjta.org, has the petition on their site. They have a link to it, and they have a reason that you can print as the reason for your appeal. And you can attach it and mail that in so that you don't have to come up with your own legal reason.
I thought you might have had a newer one. We have that one already, and we do share that one.
Yes.
Well, that'd be wonderful if that could be repealed and the courts could find in favor of the taxpayer.
It would be really nice to get it resolved, and I think it should be repealed.
Yeah. Oh, boy. So one of the, I guess the biggest problem we have now in the county is that county budget. We have, I think it's 8.1 million in the red, and some of that I think it can be covered by Teeter funds, which were rated to pay, that were previously planned to do equipment upgrades, but since that was rated, the upgrades can't happen.
Right.
And do you have any thoughts or ideas of what the county can do? I know that you couldn't say, well, just eliminate the libraries or this or that, and
well, and I don't think I would say eliminate the libraries. Certainly I'm a supporter of the libraries, or I wouldn't sponsor a team at the Friends Trivia Bee. We have done, I think all county departments, but certainly my department, I know the library, have done some pretty creative things over the last few years as we've downsized. The problem is that the budget deficit is so significant that we're going to have to make even bigger cuts. The dilemma is that there are those in government who believe that we can't do certain things because, for example, our county administrator opposes closing on Fridays. And yet, when I talk to constituents, property owners, taxpayers, they understand completely that with this type of cut, it may require county government being closed on Fridays and business being conducted Monday through Thursday. I think we're going to have to quit thinking like we did in the 1950s and realize that this is the 21st century. These are difficult times.
Yeah.
We are making massive changes, and we're going to have to look at things differently. I'm talking to another department about how we might work out perhaps a job sharing arrangement to try and save some staff members and share them. I'm talking to my staff members about what we might do given the 15% cut that we're being asked to make this year. The staff is stepping up and coming up with ideas, but we're out of the easy ideas now. Now we're going to have to make those hard decisions, and I think they're going to impact everyone.
One of the things that our Taxpayer Association is concerned with is unfunded liabilities. And the county assessor, the county auditor also has some concerns about that.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, CalPERS, which is a retirement system for public employees and also elected officials, has a process whereby the county negotiates with the unions for what will be the increases in pay and increases in retirement benefits or decreases. Mm-hmm. And what's happened, I think, over time, there's been no decreases, but there's been steady increases. And part of the benefits that go for the retirement system are based on prescribed benefits, not prescribed costs, not prescribed expense. In other words, when the negotiation happens between the employer, the county, and the union, both the negotiators are part of the system. So if they would decide to change from a prescribed benefit, which must be paid regardless of whether there's money or not. Mm-hmm. And if there's a shortfall, it has to go back to the taxpayer. If that should be changed from a prescribed benefit to a prescribed cost, then the only thing that the taxpayers would be accountable for would be that amount of money that would go to the retirement system, regardless of whether the retirement system earned money on its investments or not. So that would shift the risk of poor investments that the retirement system may make from the taxpayer to the retired people and also the employee. It seems, at least to us, that seems to be a more fair approach because it's really their money. The money doesn't belong to the unions, and it doesn't seem to belong to the county, and so private companies do not do the prescribed benefits anymore. They go to the prescribed amount of money that's donated into the retirement system. Do you have any thoughts on that? That's kind of a complicated question, huh?
Well, I have plenty of thoughts. So you need to tell me if you've got the little flashing light saying we're down to 2 minutes.
We got more than 5 minutes.
First, I think there's a fallacy that county employees haven't given anything up. 5 years ago, for about 3 years, they were furloughed every year, so they were taking essentially pay cuts, and they were in fact giving salary up in that case. Their pay raises, if you will, have been 0 to none. Now, recently, they have, in fact, had 2.5%, and January 1st, they'll get 4%. But at the same time, they've gone back and paid their 7% CalPERS contribution, whereas before, about 20 years ago, the county employees negotiated. This is the meet and confer process that you were talking about. They negotiated to have the county pay the 7% in exchange for not taking pay raises. So they've absorbed that 7%. I've heard the debate about 401k versus the CalPERS model. And I think, Al, I hate to admit how old I am, but I'm going to guess you and I are of the same age. And I'm a member of AARP.
I'm 36.
Okay. Well, I'm a member of AARP. And in last month's magazine, they had a very interesting article about the evolution of 401ks, how they started under President Reagan and were really intended for the big boys who were pulling in hundreds of thousands of dollars as a way to shelter income. They were never intended to take the place of these defined benefit programs. And yet, as you said, a lot of private enterprise has backed away from that because they're trying to shift their employees to 401ks. The problem with the concept is that, and I don't know about you, maybe you're far brighter than I'm not qualified to invest my retirement money in a 401k so that when I get ready to retire, it will have grown to a point that I can get an annuity back out of that. So I think what's happened is we have these disparities, and we need as a community to come together and talk about what's right for Calaveras County. We also need to keep in mind Calaveras County employees are not in the Social Security system. Now, when we talk about unfunded liabilities of CalPERS, I think you'll agree there have been debates for years about how long Social Security will last. It's unconscionable to me that any employer would be exempt from Social Security. I truly believe Calaveras County's employees should be in Social Security.
Why aren't they?
Because they negotiated and opted out in the 80s during a little window of time when government agencies could get out of Social Security. For Social Security's long-term health, I think all of those government employees who got out should be put back in. That extends to Congress and extends to the state legislature. And before we go too far and get off a field of CalPERS, I would like to say someone needs to look at the legislature's retirement system too. That's a pretty cushy system. And no one ever brings it up when they talk about CalPERS.
Oh, interesting. We certainly would like to see that. One of the things that we certainly agree with you on is that in order to keep good employees, you need to provide a competitive compensation package for them.
Right.
You not just want to hire them, you want to keep them. Mm-hmm. So it has to be very fair. The two, I don't know if it's right or left, but the two divergent viewpoints is who would absorb the risks when the retirement systems make bad investments or do not return an expected return. And one point of view says that should go back to the taxpayer. Another point of view should be it should go to the people that own the money, which is the employee and the retiree, which means that if there's a 20% loss in their income, that means that there'll be less money for retirees, even though they were hoping to have their check the same until they die.
I truly believe that we are all responsible for our own investments, and I agree that when my 401k has a problem, I'm the one taking the hit.
Right.
So
okay.
I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, basically, that's true.
Right.
What do you see coming ahead? We've got a couple of minutes left, and now let's end it on a point of optimism, if it's possible.
Okay. So the bad news, then I'll say the bad news first. What's coming ahead are what we talked about earlier, the budget challenges that the county faces, the problems I think we're all going to grapple with about what services we're going to be able to continue to provide with the number of people and workload that we have. And what I think is a bright spot on the horizon is the sense of coming together, certainly at my staff level, and trying to work through that so that we are providing the best public service for the taxpayers and the property owners of Calaveras County. I think with that, we have a very bright future on the horizon. We're just going to go through some hard times to get there.
Well, we make it worse before it gets better. But one thing for sure is that we've been watching some amazing things your department, along with other departments, have been doing to be able to handle responsibilities. It's really good, and it's amazing to me how many good people work for the county.
Well, thank you, and I'm certainly going to take that compliment back to them. And let me also thank you on behalf of the taxpayers for giving me the honor of the Excellence in Public Service Award.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for watching our program, and we'll see you next time.